Yes, indeedy. Ladies and gentlemen, we got one of my best buds in the fantasy space on today's episode. That is the great Erik Ong. He'll be with us here in about 90 seconds with his 5 targets leading up to this 2024-2025 fantasy campaign. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm your host, Dan Vespris, at Dan Vespris, DanBesbris. Drop a like on the damn video if you're watching on that end. If you're listening or watching, hit that subscribe button. This is the time to do it. Every little thing you do the moment you start listening to this show helps the show power boost to everyone else. So thank you in advance for that. And also, those 5-star reviews do go a long way. Before we get to Erik, though, I got to take care of our sponsor, Bet Online. They're the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. They've got every stat, every matchup breakdown, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Bet Online boasts the largest catalog of odds on everything from football to baseball. Playoffs are happening right now. Hockey, hoops, just about to start. Political props. And when the game, or, the game of politics, when that's all over, and the world is sinking, head to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack and poker, unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering, Bet Online. The game starts here. Erik Ong at Rotomancer over on Twitter, a member of the Old Man Squad, the host of the Fantasy Fast Break, a fantasy basketball old school legend, the thriller from Manila. I don't know where I'm going with all of this stuff, but an old buddy of mine. Erik, what's up, dude? Good morning to you. We're 15 hours apart right now.
Yes, good morning. Well, good afternoon to you, Dan.
Thanks.
And good as we say on Discord, good time zone to everyone, regardless of what your time zone is, whatever time zone you're at listening or watching this podcast. Hello.
Hello. That's like the Uncle Leo treatment right there. I appreciate that. So first of all, I love the fact that that fantasy basketball is such a global game that we can find this time to interact, that it is so big in the Philippines. It's big in Australia. It's big in America. It's big in, I have a weirdly large group of followers in the Middle East, and like obviously the UK and Canada, because like English speaking countries and all that. But like, it's so cool. And also, like, Erik, I don't know if maybe you're aware of this already, but in the people that I've spoken to in the fantasy space, before we get to your 5 targets, you're sort of like the fantasy king of the Philippines. When people see your name and your face and hear your voice, that like it moves bodies. It's very cool. Do you realize that you are that icon in your home country about fantasy basketball?
Um no. This is
You
the
are,
first
man.
I've actually heard of it. I mean, I know we've got some followers over on X, and maybe because I've been tweeting for quite a while now, and I've obviously started with writing, and I've been in the fantasy content creation space for over 10 over you know over a dozen years by now. But
Yeah.
I don't really see myself as the Philippine icon of fantasy basketball. I mean, there are um I don't know, a lot of guys up and coming in our space from the Philippines, and as you said, there is a huge following. I mean, I'm in so many leagues with a lot of Filipinos, obviously, but it's also global because um, we've got Filipinos who are residing in Canada, Australia, Europe. Even though it's an quote unquote all Filipino league, we span across so many time zones. It's like really crazy.
It's amazing. I love it. Let's get down to brass tacks. Again, you can find Erik on Twitter at Rotomancer, Rotomancer. You've got 5 targets today. I'm going to let you decide what order we should talk about them in. Erik, where do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah, let's start with
Don't sound too excited about it. Uh,
I, I'm well, first of all, let me say to the listeners, I felt bad that it was only 5 targets because I have a long list. Um, which
Well, they
is
can
in a good
follow you.
way.
That'll be the segue at the end. We'll say,
All
follow Eric
right.
if you want the rest of them.
If there are enough requests, I'll even do an entire show where I can bust out an entire list of 20 plus names of targets people should go after if they want to win in fantasy. Let's do that, shall we? If we get enough
Oh, yeah.
responses, if they like this little um well, if you're into the Epicurean terminology, amuse bouche, uh or should I say appetizer for the less culinarily inclined people. This is a little bit of a sampler.
This is a
um
sophisticated episode of Old Man Squad
oh,
Fantasy
or
Basketball.
yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. Outside of fantasy basketball, I love food. I'd probably be a food blogger if I wasn't writing about fantasy back
Oh,
in the
man.
day. But anyway, let's just go in order where it's going. Right? Uh, I'm just so glad I wasn't out. Let's tackle these guys in the order that they've been drafted at based on ADP, basically. So this first guy, I'm pretty sure he's already popular by now, but I'm not sure how popular he is because I think he's still been sliding because it's been a bit of a question mark how good he's actually gonna be for this coming season. And the guy I'm talking about is Karl-Anthony Towns. Post trade to New York, I've liked what I've seen so far in preseason. I like the situation where he's at, given that Mitchell Robinson is nowhere to be seen for God knows how many games or this entire season altogether. But yeah, I'm loving Anthony Towns. I officially have around 4 shares so far, which is pretty good. Thankfully, I'm in a couple of auction leagues. I paid a good chunk of change for Cat because I think that this whole trade situation is going to be very beneficial. I think that we're going to see the points still be there. I do believe the rebounds are going to rise and maybe the blocks too, which totally disappeared when he got paired with Rudy Gobert back when he was with the Wolves. Um, where do you stand on Cat? Are you also a Cat believer like me, Dan?
So I'm really curious your thoughts on this. I think Cat going in the second round is a nice spot for him. And I just did a roto draft like right before you and I went on air, and I went Kevin Durant, and then immediately I was like, nah, I should have taken Cat, which is like a similar fantasy stat set, but more rebounds, and I didn't do it. I don't know why I didn't do it, but I didn't do it. My question for you, Eric, a follow up on Cat is, and folks have argued with me about this in the YouTube comments and on Twitter as well. Where do you see him ending up? Because in my mind, the rebounds, the blocks, they do come back a little bit. But I've had folks that are like, oh, he's going to go back to like, the 26 point per game Cat from Minnesota thing. And I'm like, I just don't think he's going to play. I know it's Tibbs, but like, could he get up to 36, 37 minutes a game like that old version of Cat? I don't feel like his body can take that anymore. So it feels like the reality for him is somewhere in between bad Cat, which is Cat at the power forward, and Mega Cat, which was Karl-Anthony Towns, young man, 37 minutes a game, playing all 82 at center. Is the reality somewhere in between those for you?
I think that's exactly where I put him at. Uh, we're looking at somebody who was flirting with top 5, top 10 value on a week to week basis when he was really hot, right? Uh, he's obviously fallen off a lot since, but this this pivot, this return to the center position, is something that he can really take advantage of because as he grew, being a stretch four with the Wolves, all that skill set that he's been developing will translate well to him dominating opposition as a five, I believe. And I think that where the Knicks are at with the talent that's set up, especially in that starting five, that's looking quite interesting with the scoring of Brunson, the defense of Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. I think Cat is really set up for like I said, and in between, maybe a top 15 finish would not be out of the question here. Uh, I think that's a very reasonable range to expect his ceiling to touch this season.
Is that where you'd be looking to draft him?
Uh, I'd obviously prefer to pick him up a little bit later than that, and
Right.
I believe he is going a bit later than that, and that's where a lot of managers can really take advantage. Um, I was just also doing an 8 cat roto, and with the 16th pick, I think well, everybody who's followed me knows that I'm such a huge Chet Holmgren fan. I had to go with Chet over Cat. I wanted to secure those blocks. I know you're not a Chet fan because his value's tied to those blocks, but mark my words. And since we're on this video slash podcast for posterity, my projection for Chet down the line in his career is he's going to be a Dirk Nowitzki with blocks.
Mm. And Hartenstein's
He's
out for a month now, too. So,
well, so not so bad, right? It's not as much of a
right.
reach there. But as I clicked on Chet Holmgren, part of me was wishing maybe Cat would have been. I Let's put it this way: considering how much I love Chet and how huge a fan I am of Chet, it was actually painful to pass on Cat. So uh, that being said, just an example to the reader, the viewers and listeners, um, how crazy Cat is going. So it's a 12-team 8 cat roto. The guy who picked second, who had Nikola Jokic, got to pair Cat with him. How
Oh,
crazy!
man.
Oh, that's just gross, right there.
Um,
I mean, ick.
that's, yeah, that team's probably going to grab a couple of guards after that, I'm guessing. But, man, that's wild. Erik, where do you want to go second? We'll keep this shuttle zooming along here.
Okie dokie. And this is more of an experiential kind of pick that I've noticed. I've been taking him consistently throughout my draft so far this season. Somewhere in the middle rounds, I find myself wanting rebounds, wanting threes. So I go, oh no, there aren't any centers who do that at this stage of the game. I find myself gravitating to Michael Porter Jr.
Hmm.
Um, I know he's not very popular. He's actually, going somewhere. He's got a wide range, actually, somewhere in the 70s to 90s, depending on the appetite of the league. But to be honest, and this is an interesting sharing, uh, it's been many years since I punted free throw. So I don't know how to punt free throw um, anymore. So I tend to gravitate to always securing field goal no matter what. And what I love about MPJ is that he's somebody who could potentially give you three threes per game while shooting at a very solid clip. He commits hardly any turnovers. He flirts with 7 boards a game, and somebody who is SF eligible. That's just wonderful. Now, I know he does not provide a lot of defensive stats, no steals, no blocks, maybe half a steal per game if we're lucky there. But I believe that this season is an opportunity for Porter Jr. to rebound into something uh, more of a value guy, given the situation that the Nuggets already lost KCP, and they will need more shooting coming from Porter Jr. And he is one of the better catch and shoot guys on that team that's left over there. So I'm liking his what I'm getting out of him and where I'm getting him, which is somewhere in the late 70s, if I'm lucky, mid 80s, early 90s, depending again on the appetite of the league.
Do you think that MPJ could, because, looking at the last couple of healthy seasons for him, one of them he was top 30 and the other he was more like top 75. And it seemed like it was almost entirely based on his field goal percent. Is there a way you think that he could inch back towards what he was before? Or should we just be satisfied that, he's top 75 kind of coasting along, and if you get anything else, it's gravy? How do you approach him from a mental standpoint?
Uh, all right. From a team building perspective, finding a guy who shoots over 48% from the field while chipping in over 2.5 threes per game is just a wonderful mix. Um, it's really hard uh, to preserve field goal percentage if you want to win 3 pointers made. And he is one of the few guys who can really bring that to the table. So in almost every team that I've drafted, Cat, for example, who does provide, I believe, around 2 threes per game, and he's shooting obviously 50% from the field. MPJ really fits that kind of build where you're preserving field goal, points, threes, rebounds, ideally low turnovers. And he's generally overlooked because of the fact that he does not provide defensive stats. So I think that he is sliding enough that he will provide, I'll split the difference, maybe top 60 value, right? I love splitting the difference. It's my
Yep.
it's my it's my safe landing zone there.
No, and it makes a lot of sense actually to kind of take that midpoint, because then you don't set unrealistic expectations. You're mentally prepared for him maybe being a little bit lower or a little bit higher, but you take that midpoint and you say, oh, is this a value spot for me where I'm drafting him? Talking to Erik Ong at Rotomancer on Twitter. Erik, who is player number 3?
Okay, arguably this next guy is the guy I have the most shares of this season,
Ooh, here
and
we go.
he is my real life pick to win sixth man of the year. All right, and I'm talking about none other than Donte DiVincenzo. I was already picking him. Get this, pre-trade to the Wolves. I admittedly I was taking him a lot later uh, back then, uh, but I was looking at his numbers, and I did. It took me a bit of digging to realize that, oh my goodness, he was like a top 5 per game 3-point contributor. All right, and he was delivering almost 1.5 steals per game. He is an icon for 3 and D. And it's normally the 3 and D types that you will see managers use to fill in the gaps, so to speak, in their teams. You want a 3-point shooter, you want to shore up on threes. You obviously still don't want to hurt your turnovers. Now, I know Dante's field goal ain't that great. It leaves a bit to be desired. But finding a top 5 3-pointer, 3-point shooting contributor who's not an aged Clay Thompson, and who actually provides defensive numbers, he's a value pick outside of the top 120 sometimes. But obviously, um, he's already made a splash with the Wolves. He's gonna get huge usage. He's gonna have a solidified role. I think the minutes are gonna be there for him. The opportunities are gonna be there for him. And yeah, he's my bet for sixth man. Uh, I don't know. I can't think of other guys who I'm sure there are, but Donte will be an interesting guy who will provide decent contributions for what I'm looking for. And I just love what he brings to the table.
He's going at 111 on the Yahoo board right now. How much space do you think he's got to gain above that? So, like, if someone listening or watching was thinking about reaching a little bit, where is the earliest you would think about taking him?
Wow. I don't think there's a need to reach for him earlier than the top 100. So anything earlier than that, but after 100, it's okay. Because at the end of the day, during fine, he had an opportunity to explode last season with the Knicks when they were during a period where they were plagued with injuries, missing Julius Randle and OG Anunoby, etc. And that was the time that Donte really took off. and just kept on checking threes. And uh, please correct my NCAA knowledge of his history knowledge here, but I believe that he was a knockdown shooter way back in college, and I think he was even. I think I saw a clip of him on YouTube because he had this killer 3-pointer that just closed out games, and he was a clutch shooter back in the day, and I think he still has that in him. You don't just grow out of that. If you have that, if you're a clutch guy, you're a clutch guy.
Erik, what are you working on before we get to your last two guys?
Well, right now I'm running pretty much the Discord
Yes, you
of
are.
the Old
That's true.
Man Squad Network. So if any of you want some fantasy advice, just head on over to our Discord channel. I am there as often as I physically can possibly be, and I get to as many fantasy basketball related questions as I can. So uh, that's occupying my time right now in the space, on and off. I've unfortunately not been able to bust out a lot of episodes on Fantasy Fast Break, but once the season starts, uh, please stay tuned because I will be
Oh, yeah.
recapping every day with the latest recaps of the box scores, notable performances, and obviously what everyone wants to hear, pickups, right? So
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
yeah. So please stay tuned for that because I'm going to be delivering the goods pretty much like Donte DiVincenzo will this season.
The big ragu, man. Erik is again Rotomancer on Twitter. He's got two more juicy picks for us here. He has many more, by the way, up his sleeve, and another reason to find him over on social. But Erik, where do you want to go for number 4 today?
All right. I think this guy's already pretty popular, but uh, it's still a question mark how good he might actually be. And I know you've had already more than a couple of guys have Dyson Daniels on their
Oh
my
yeah.
guys lists. So you can just add me to that, and to that list of guys. Um, it's basically important, I feel, even though I know I had a choice of so many guys who I could have uh, mentioned on this show, but I felt it was worth echoing in the sense that I am fully invested. And every time that in a draft and I see someone else take Dyson, I lose a little bit of me in that moment, and that's how excited I am. Uh, why am I excited? First of all, him moving to the Hawks. The Hawks were looking for somebody to provide a lesser version, admittedly, that's clear, of what DeJounte Murray was bringing to the table on the defensive side of the ball. And that's exactly what Dyson Daniels is going to do. I'm not expecting him to score anywhere near what Murray was doing, obviously. But I believe that from what I've seen in real life footage, as well as the stats when they do come out, Daniels is a very solid defender. And he's only going to get better with more opportunities with the Hawks than he did back when he was with the Pelicans. And I'm liking what I'm going to see as far as him being able to rebound the ball for a guard, pass the ball. Obviously, there will be issues with his efficiency because he's been known to not be an efficient shooter from the field and the line. But we're talking about a late round flyer here. And steals, believe me, are one of the hardest things to look for late in drafts. You'll hear analysts and experts say, if you're worried about threes, no problem. You can either find them at the end of drafts or even on the wire and stream them. Threes are the most streamed stats in head to head. But steals, oh boy, it's really hard to find steals. And if you just look at what Dyson Daniels is doing, uh, or did rather, towards the end of last season, he was doing ones, twos, threes, even four steals in a game for the Pelicans. Fine, the scoring was not there, but the guy can really defend. And I believe whether or not he starts playing a lot, I know he's actually started alongside Trae Young. I'm not holding my breath that he actually starts the season, you know, as the shooting guard for the Hawks. I believe that Bogey is going to get that spot. But even if coming off the bench, uh, Dyson is going to have enough minutes, maybe at least 25, maybe if he's lucky, more than that. But at 25 minutes per game, I believe the Dyson Daniels we're going to see this season is going to be a whole lot better than the Dyson Daniels we've been seeing in the past.
Yeah, I can't argue with you. I like to try to play a little devil's advocate, but anybody that hears me try is going to know that it's not with my heart because I just posted the results from the 2 roto drafts I did today, and I took Dyson Daniels in the 13th round in both of them, which, by the way, was awesome that he was there in the 13th round of both of them. Like, legitimately, these are Yahoo drafts, so it's not expert leagues, but he was there effectively with the last pick because I had the 11th and the 12th pick in the 2 drafts. Lucky me, I know, but that means I got him at 155 and 156. And I just think that's all upside, especially if his shot gets any better season over season. You're talking about all kinds of gravy on top of it. Well, I will say this, Eric, if I'm ever in a league with you and Adam King and Noah Rubin, I'm gonna just throw like a picture, a like a steak with a picture of Dyson Daniels tacked to it in the middle of the room, and let you guys fight to the death over it. Where do you want to go with player number 5? This is the last one on the list today, but again, follow Eric on Twitter at Rotomancer, and he's got plenty more up his sleeve. But where's number 5 for today's show?
Oh boy. Okay. Before Donte DiVincenzo was traded to the Wolves, I had Jaime Jaquez Jr. as somebody who would potentially be MIP in my book. I really feel that Jaquez is somebody that the market has slept on. The fact that I know that the Heat have listed Nikola Jovic as the starter over Jaquez is turning off a lot of managers. But I've done a deep dive, and it's a bit of a hot take. But after Jimmy Butler, the player on the Heat with the highest basketball IQ, not defensive basketball IQ, because that would probably be Bam Adebayo, but overall basketball IQ, I would give that to Jaime. Jaquez is a player who plays in a way that he's always at the right place and at the right time. He shoots with just the right distance from the mid range, knowing that he's open and can make his shot. Not much unlike the aforementioned Jimmy Butler. He is, and this is Butler's words. I'm unfortunately cannot quote the exact words, but I believe that it was to the point that he saw a lot of himself in Jaquez. And we've already seen a preview of what Jaquez can do last season when Jimmy Butler was on the shelf. The guy exploded and was suddenly in the somehow rookie of the year conversation. I know he didn't even finish in the top 3, but that's because his minutes were inconsistent, his playing time wasn't there. But the guy showed us that he was able to pop with 20 plus point games, etc., etc. Threes. He's a very well-rounded guy. I know he doesn't top in any particular category, but if you look at his stat line, it's very clean. Just look at his percentages. He shoots very well from the field. I believe it's like 48, high 48s from the field, high 80s from the line. He'll give you around a 3 per game. And I think he can give you around 4 assists and maybe a steal per game. Just look at those numbers. Yeah, 48.9, right? And I think that the scoring will come up. Fine, he doesn't shoot a lot from the free throw line. 81.1 ain't that great, but for somebody who's only shooting 2.3 free throw attempts per game, it's not a big deal. But I can see those rebounds going up to 4 per game. I can see those assists maybe climbing to 3.5. He already does deliver a steal per game. he is one of those players who gets overlooked because he does not pop. But because his stat set is so clean, as a roto guy, Dan, you gotta at least be enticed by what you see here as a late round pick.
My hesitation on Jaquez is that for the moment, and we know it never lasts with Miami, but for the moment, they have a lot of guys healthy. Butler's healthy, Hero's healthy, Rozier's healthy, Adebayo's healthy. It kind of feels like someone's got to get out of the way for there to be quite enough shots. Does that give you any pause or no?
Okay. Uh, like I said, they are starting Nikola Jovic, but with all due respect to Jovic, who's actually a pretty decent basketball player in his own right, he's nowhere near as good as Jaquez. Jaquez, uh, he has an underrated playmaking uh, ability, and it's something that will be needed by the Heat at some point. Yes, they're currently healthy, but we all know Jimmy Butler's history of wanting to be preserved or needing to be preserved for the playoffs, uh, which is true, right? We should expect a reasonable amount of load management um, for Jimmy buckets. Tyler also has not been healthy for the last couple of seasons, and even then, even if he is coming off the bench, Jaquez, I mean, I think he's going to get sixth man minutes. And we're talking about 25, 26 minutes. And I think he can do a decent damage with that second unit. If you look at the second unit of the Heat, we're talking about what? You're not going to get a lot out of Kevin Love anymore. Uh, Maybe we're going to get some, a bit of production from their rookie, Kalel. Am I pronouncing that right?
Far as I
Kalel,
know,
where?
far as I know,
Huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
So
although something happens with young players where they don't correct like the media members for 3 years, and then all of a sudden their name is like Isaiah Hartenstein became Isaiah Hartenstein like a year ago, and he'd been in the NBA for half a decade already. It's okay. Memo to the players: please correct the media immediately. We don't want to say it wrong for 3 seasons and then learn the right way to do it. So anyway, I'm pretty sure that's right, but also, like, I don't know.
but again, just looking at the second unit of the Heat belongs to Jaime Jaquez Jr. He is just going to do it all when it comes to subbing in um, someone or anyone from that starting five. He will be the first man off the bench, I believe, and he's going to deliver. Um, he's going to surpass, at the very least, his ADP at the moment, which, by the way, is somewhere
Late.
outside of the top, very late, right?
Yeah.
So he's definitely a late round flyer. And to be fair, I've had to choose between either Dyson Daniels or Jaime Jaquez Jr. as my last pick in shallower leagues. I have, erred on the side of preference and gone with Dyson. But if we were talking about leagues that are a bit deeper, 14, 16 teamers, and I know you have listeners who also play in deeper leagues here, Jaquez is a guy to really consider after somebody like Dyson Daniels is off the board.
Hmm. Erik, with his 5 targets on today's episode, he has many, many more, but even more than that, he has a wealth of fantasy information. My one big regret this fantasy draft season is that I didn't get you and Adam on here at the same time so that I could just sit back, put my hands behind my head, and watch you guys talk about an auction draft. Erik also is an auction expert. So if folks are listening, watching, whatever, and you're like, Dan, I keep asking you about auction stuff and you keep ignoring my question, it's because I don't play in auction drafts. It's because I have too many life responsibilities where the drafts I'm in have to be done in 55 minutes flat, or I can't fit them into my day, and auction drafts take longer. But if you have questions about that side, Erik is also a fantastic resource there. He is at Rotomancer on Twitter. He's in our Discord all the time with the Old Man Squad Network. I think you and Joe Orico were like tied for the first members of the Old Man Squad Network. You're effectively a founding member of this network. So
Proud to be one. Proud to
damn
be one.
right. Proud to have you. So follow Erik on social. and we're going to do this again in the not too distant future. Erik is, by the way, for East Coasters in the U.S., Erik is quite literally on the exact opposite side of the globe. East Coasters, you are 12 hours off from Erik Ong, and I don't know why this stuff tickles me. Time zones are time zones. It's just how the world works. It rotates. It takes the same amount of time to do it every day, and yet here I am giggling like an idiot about it every time we bring it up. Erik, love you, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
And that was the benevolent Erik Ong, an absolute wealth of information. Stuck, and this is what makes me sad, so far away from us geographically, but right next to my face on your YouTube screen. Folks, as we head into the wrap-up here, I'm going to do a recap very quickly of the 5 players that Erik talked about on today's show and where he's looking at them. But also, please hit that like button. It really does go a long way. Please, 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 please don't forget to subscribe however you're taking in the content. That's going to be big once we get the season going, because those subscriptions will be a reminder when we drop our daily episodes on everything going on in the NBA with the pickups and box score analysis and weekly previews and buy lows and sell highs and all that good stuff. The subscription is what's going to keep you guys connected with us here at Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. And again, if you have the extra 20, 30, 40 seconds, whatever it is, to drop that 5-star review, that is a really big helper for us as well. The 5 players Erik discussed on today's program: Karl-Anthony Towns as a mid-second rounder for Erik. Michael Porter Jr., who's going near 80. Erik sees him as a guy that could jump a round and a half to 2 rounds of value there. Donte DiVincenzo getting drafted a little after 100. Erik thinks if you can get him around 100 or later, that'll secure you a nice chunk of value. Dyson Daniels, right at the very end of drafts, really good opportunity to jump up the board. And Jaime Jaquez Jr., who's kind of the deep league, well, not deep league, but slightly deeper. So maybe not 12, but like 14. You're going one click beyond Dyson Daniels. Jaquez, an opportunity in Miami, especially, I'll add this part, my editorial here, if someone goes down for the Heat, and I don't think we should say if, it's really more when, with Miami, at least based on recent history of everybody basically other than Bam Adebayo. Coming up over the next few shows here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, later on today, here on Friday the 18th, later on today, we will do, finally, after all this time, the Dan Besbris Bucketology episode. It's going to be a big one. I'm going to try to jam as much as I can into one powerhouse episode that might go 55, 65 minutes, something longer than we usually like to put out on this channel. But I don't think it's really worthwhile to split it up. You know, you want to get into the buckets and you want to get going. I'm not going to do the whole damn board, okay? Because there's too many freaking names. But we'll probably go 75 to 100 deep would be my guess. And we're going to bucket them out. Over the weekend, we'll be hearing from targets from my buddy Captain Kane, who was our forum lead dog with Hoopball for a very long time, buddy of mine from, again, the good old days. Over the weekend, we may get a mock draft or possibly some real draft analysis. Monday, we will do our last ADP analysis show and basically get us ready for the start of the season. It's going to be draft analysis running up to that start of that campaign. And the Dan Besbris Old Man Squad. I know you guys have all been waiting for that. That'll probably also happen either Monday or Tuesday morning. But you guys already know it. Like, putting it all in one place is really just a reorganization of shows we've already done. Big thank you once again to Erik Ong, Rotomancer on Twitter. I am Dan Besbris for Fantasy, Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. DANBESBRIS. Rotomancer is Roto, like the fantasy game. Mancer, MANCER. Old Man Squad is the network. That's the end of the program. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching again. Later.